Kamusta, my Filipino brothers and sisters out there. This afternoon, I want to read to you a translation of what the president of your country had to say about nuisance streamers, okay? Apparently, the president of your country has a very popular blog, right? And he had things to say. He addressed the Vitali situation and he addressed the entire situation in its totality with nuisance streamers. And he made some very interesting comments. And so we're going to get into the translation. By the way, this isn't exactly correlated with the footage I'm going to be showing you right now, but this is the translation of what he says in this video you're seeing right now. So he says, this is the president speaking. This guy is crazy. He is not Filipino anyway. Can I curse at him? One other thing we see in this week is the infuriating thing that is foreigners vlogging has done to our countrymen. Regardless of whether it is a prank or not, is there a Filipino whose blood is not boiling upon seeing what we have seen? This is saddening, as this has already become a part of social media. There are vloggers out there dedicated only to causing trouble, taunting people, becoming nuisances, and disrespecting others to gain viewers. And then he shows a picture of Johnny Salami, Ramzid Kamid Ismail, whatever his name is, right? Here's the thing with this Johnny Somali guy, right? Remember I said before in other vlogs, you know, this nuisance streaming thing was something that existed prior to Johnny Somali, but it really took off. It really became something that was internationally sort of a problem, recognized as a problem with this guy. And I think it has to do with his face. He has such an arrogant, smug face. And he's not the only person in the world with an arrogant, smug face, right? But when you put on top of that, the fact that he's engaging in such arrogant, smug activities, such disrespectful, such outlandish, mind-blowingly disrespectful activities, you know, it really just, you know, it drew more attention to it. We should not subscribe to that kind of behavior. Filipinos do not behave like that. Trust that we, the Philippine government, the use of we here is the executive we, is the exclusive we, will not let them, nuisance streamers, vloggers, to continue doing what they do. Okay, then he goes on to quote something that Secretary Jean-Marc Remula, after learning how to pronounce the two L's, because in Spanish, when you see two L's, it automatically means, you know, it's like a Y. So he goes to quote something that he said in his press conference on Vitali. The days when a foreigner can disrespect Filipinos are over. This shall serve as an example that we take our country seriously. You know, there was a guy in the comments when I made a video prior. Remember, this was one of my first videos, right? So, but you know, there were people commenting on it, and they were saying that, you know, this has nothing to do with geopolitics and Trump and America and stuff, and maybe it doesn't. And I ended up learning that, you know, America has a very good relationship with the Philippines, but at the same time, you know, what they're saying in this statement is a factual statement. The days, look, they may be attempts in America to make America great again, you know, and, you know, let them do their thing, right? But what you have to understand, there's no going back to like 1999. There's no going back to that. The world has changed. You know, even if America is made great again, other countries are making themselves greater than they were before as well. So, you know, the gap has closed no matter what happens. And so this idea that some Americans have that they can go to other countries and just, you know, be expected to be treated like royalty, that's sort of an old thinking. I mean, it's still very good to have American citizenship and an American passport, but it just doesn't have the same potency. It just doesn't carry the same weight. Filipinos are inherently kind, respectful, humble, and incredibly patient, which is exactly why it is very saddening to see that these traits are being taken advantage of. It is natural for us to merely laugh this off and not make a big deal out of this kind of disrespect. But this does not mean that the government will let this slide. We should fight back against the bullies. I'm telling you, this has some sort of a subconscious emotional link to Trump, right? The government stands with you in putting these people in their proper place. I hope this serves as a lesson to those who attempt to enter the Philippines solely to be menace to the Filipinos and mock them. Right, so next up we have an interview with the Interior Undersecretary on television in the Philippines, and he's going to give more of a legal update as to the actual situation. Where is Vitali staying? What is he facing in terms of the amount of jail time? Will the Filipino government succumb to any request for him to be extradited back to Russia? And so he answers all of these questions, and he goes into more detail about the legal specifics of Vitali's situation.
Now let's discuss that and more with Interior Undersecretary Donnie Puno, who joins us now live here in the studio this Tuesday morning. Good morning to you, Yusek, and thank you for joining us here on Morning Matters.
Good morning, Pauline. Thank you for having me.
Let's start off with that Russian vlogger who made quite the headlines for his content.
Yeah.
I mean, you even have the president commenting, expressing his dismay that should not be tolerated. Give us an update, Yusek. What's the latest on the investigation, the charges on this Russian vlogger?
So briefly, what happened last week, DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla called for a press conference to present the Russian vlogger Vitaly Zdorovetskiy to the media. And this was based on a blotter that was filed in Taguig, where Vitali, based on the report, committed disruptive and inappropriate acts, to quote the report.
Who filed the blotter?
Some victims in Taguig. So I'm sure you've seen.
Themselves.
Yes, I'm sure you've seen the videos. He was caught harassing a Filipina. He tried grabbing the cap of a security guard, as you can see there. And then there were other acts that he committed in Boracay. This guy has been around. He's been doing this since 2012 all over the world. He's been in the States, he's been to Brazil, Egypt, the UK, doing this sort of thing. Now, Secretary John Vic has said he violated our laws and he disrespected Filipinos. Filipinos we are friendly people, we are hospitable people. But this guy took advantage of us. And ang malas niya, if other countries merely deported him, ang malas niya ngayon, his tough luck is that we have Secretary Remulla saying now that we're not gonna let him off easy. So he will not be deported. He will stand trial here. He will face the charges here. And hopefully he will be jailed here.
So where is Vitali right now?
Vitali is currently detained at the Bureau of Immigration's detention center in Camp Bagong Diwa.
Okay.
And he will await trial there.
And what charges specifically will be filed against?
There are several charges that he's already facing. There are several counts of unjust vexation. There's theft, attempted robbery, even I think is one of the cases that he's facing. In the inquest that was conducted, he admitted to it. In the presence of his counsel, he admitted to doing those acts.
Oh my God, so he admitted. I think what they said in front of his counsel, I think that means in front of his lawyer, that he did everything, all the crimes he's been charged with, even the attempted robbery and all of that stuff. He admitted it. I think he admitted it. I think he still did not at that point understand the seriousness of the situation he was in. I think he probably thought to himself, just like what he thought when he went there, that, I'm an American, I'm a white male, I guess. Those are the common parlance words they use. And that, they just want to make an example for whatever reason, but ultimately, they're going to let me get out of here. I am not going to have to spend a decade in a Filipino jail in these kinds of conditions, right? And maybe he just thinks, look, these are just pranks. I just did a bunch of pranks. Do you know how bad it's going to look if the Filipino government sticks me in a gulag for multiple years because of a couple of pranks? I mean, if they want to set an example, let them set an example. This man is gambling with the rest of the years of his life. Which, I mean, I don't know why it's bothering me, to be honest with you. But, this is a good example to look at, right? You don't gamble with the rest of the years of your life, folks. This is a very serious situation he's in.
But can he argue that it was all for content? I mean, for social media? Yeah.
He can argue it all he wants, right? But the bottom line is he violated laws. He committed acts against Filipino citizens, which is against our laws. So he can argue it all he wants. He can take it to court.
So, Yusek, I mean, what message is the DILG trying to send here to foreigners who come to the Philippines to make content and, I guess, also disrupt the lives of Filipinos while they're here?
Creating content such as Vitali's he can go about doing that all he wants. But, it was in an editorial in Manila Times the other day. And they were saying, while arguments rage about regulating content and such, let's not forget that there are already existing laws that people need to follow. And he tried creating his content at the expense of the Filipinos, making them look like fools. That's what Secretary John Vic didn't like. So we'll await the trial and we'll see what happens.
You know what I found quite interesting also, Yusek, during this particular press conference that we were showing earlier, the demeanor also of Vitali, right?
Yeah, he was rude. The whole time the secretary was talking to the media, he was in the back, he was saying things, he was mumbling aloud.
Yeah.
He was disruptive. His behavior is totally disruptive.
This is such an insightful interview. One, they're talking about how he is not remorseful at all, and that is not going to look good when he goes in front of the judge. The judge is going to look at that more than all the other things because people make mistakes. But then when they're not remorseful for those, that's when the nail goes into the coffin in terms of, are you going to be guilty? What kind of a sentence you're going to get? Another thing, there seems to be other angles. This seems to be part of a larger problem. They're talking about fake news, and I don't want to get into the internal politics of in another country that's literally on the other side of the planet from where I live. But obviously, these are things all countries are dealing with and, trying to control and regulate this media landscape of the internet. And it seems to be bigger than just Vitali. Vitali just became, again, the example. And trust me, folks, if there's one role you don't want to be in life, you don't want to play in life, you don't want to end up being an example. But unfortunately, that's where Mr. Vitali appears to have found himself, as an example.
He wasn't apologetic.
He was not apologetic at all.
Okay.
Good thing for him that the secretary was able to control his temper. Hindi siya pinatulan ni secretary. But really, he was even at the press conference, he was very in the presence of PNP personnel, in the presence of our secretary. He acted that way.
So I guess the question right now, Yusek, is the DILG doing anything, or does the DILG plan to do anything to curb the misuse of these kinds of behavior on social media and potentially harm Filipinos?
We've had several discussions over the past couple of weeks with PCO Secretary J. Ruiz and the DICT Secretary Henry Aguda. And this has to be an effort between the three departments. And I think we're headed in that direction. This is all in line with the President's order to go after fake news. Fake news, disinformation, misinformation, all of this content on social media that's
The point is, the moral of the story is Vitali is screwed. Even if they decide they have a change of heart and they want to let him go, it will not look good because they made all of this big fuss and made this big hoorah, and then they just let him go? No, they have to now, whether they want to or not, keep him in there for at least a couple of years, bare minimum. But this whole thing running around harassing people, I saw something in that very video with the president of the Philippines. There was a little boy called Kizzy, and I researched it. I actually looked up the boy. He's like 12 years old, running around grabbing. The only reason somebody isn't gonna slap you at the next week Sunday is because they're gonna be afraid of being charged with violence against a minor. So obviously, they have to regulate this up because kids are watching these things and kids are thinking this is a viable career path going forward, and so they have to put a stop to this. And subscribe to Mr. Fiesta 24/7. I make entertaining and informative videos about trending topics, and at the core of everything I do here is fun and positivity. So if you like that, if you want to see where this is going to go, subscribe.